Go. We're going live. We're going live. We're going live. We are live. Look at that. Hey, everybody. Look what I'm doing. We got a lot going on here. Thanks for being here. It's our pre-show of today's 2/20/11/01 Core 1 A Plus study group. We will get started in approximately 9 minutes and 20 seconds. And we'll get things going today. This is the pre-show where I start making sure everything is working. I guess I really have been working on making sure everything's working for a while now, but now we're really checking. We're looking at cameras, which look good. We're looking at our stream, which looks good. We're at 3%. That's where we want it. We've got things queued up here. Do we have, that's working. Do I have this on? I do. We were just looking at the hurricane map is what we were doing. That's all we were doing. You know, these are not very, when you're watching the replay, there's no timeliness. There's no date. When you start at the top of the hour and you watch the study group from the very beginning, like title page. But in the pre-show, we talk about things that are going on, you know, in the world. And since I am based in Florida, really right where that H is, coming through that's where I am. That's where actually I'm a little bit, no, that's about right. That's about where my house is. So there will be an H, a large H going across the sky on Thursday morning. We're looking forward to this. It'll be great. Right at 7 a.m. local time Thursday, for those of you wondering. So there's always something fun going on in Florida, and that's what's going on this week. That's the fun thing happening this week. So we got a lot going on. Yes, the H means it's up to 110 mile per hour winds. Hopefully by the time it gets to me, it will be less than that. So we will see. Sadly, I do not have a generator at this home. Sadly. So if the power goes out, we're just going to have no power. That's kind of how it works. Am I going to pack up? Nope, we're not leaving. We aren't going anywhere. I am in a relatively safe part. I'm right in the middle of the state. So I'm nowhere near the water, nowhere near. Now, if you're on the coast of Florida, you got to get out of there. It's going to go up 15 feet of water. It's going to cover your house right there. The entire coast of Florida, that Tampa Bay area, is just going to be decimated. It is going to be horrendous for them. There will be tons of property damage there. We will be rebuilding that area of the state for years. We've done this before. We know that's what's going to happen. So it's going to be tragic. It's going to be awful. The images, I'm sure, are going to be heartbreaking. But where I am is the center of the state. So we are very safe here. I'm in a relatively new home. So it's all cinder block. We're in good shape. We're fine where we happen to be. And by the time it gets here, it will be a category 2, category 1, which I've gone through a couple of those recently. So those aren't too big of a deal. But boy, you'd never want to be in one. I don't recommend it. It's not fun. It's not something you want to do. So let us be clear. But we have chips, we have scotch, we have that's all we have. We just have chips and scotch. So I think we're covered. I think we got everything we need. But that is we do have supplies. We have the water. I've got a reverse osmosis system. You know, in Florida, we are ready for these things. We always have it ready to go. So that's kind of how it goes. In the next 5.5 minutes or so, we will be starting. This is the pre-show, but we'll be starting. I'll have questions for you. If you would like to get on the map, here's our map. There we go. It's this one right here. Folks already checking in. I guess I could put myself up on the map. This map here is the one we're talking about. If you go to professormesser.com/QA, you can put your virtual pin in our map, and we'll have that going there as well. I don't know how long it will be here with no power. Certainly we will lose power. That's sort of a given when one of these comes through. And sometimes it takes a day, sometimes it takes 2 days, sometimes it takes longer than that. So we eat ice cream first, I guess, is really what happens. We do have a lot of things that now I have a gas stove, so we can cook. We can have hot food. And if the power goes out for an extended period of time, we'll be cooking all of the food that is currently in the freezer. And then we clear out the fridge and we just start over again. That is the nature of the beast. It's kind of the way we do it here. It's going to be a mess. We are in much better shape than our friends in Tampa. If you are in Tampa right now, then you are trying to get inland. You are trying to find a nice place inland where you can be. But nobody is going to be in Sarasota on the river. You're not going to be in Tampa on the bay. You're not going to be anywhere up and down the coast. You're not going to be there. So that's the way it works. Most importantly, as long as the important part is that you just need to stay safe. Just get out of wherever you are and get somewhere safe. We can get another house. We can rebuild the house. We can get another Xbox. We can get another computer. We can get another thing. Things are things. So the important part is you. Just need to stay safe and away. So we are safe, and everyone is here in my home, and we're battening down the hatches. I still have more things to take in. I'm still not completely prepped yet. I have a few things outside that I need to bring in, but it's things like chairs that I like to sit outside during the morning. So that's kind of the way it works. Is there a way to zoom that map on the website? I think you should be able to click on it. It should be able to zoom up. See how I'm zooming up on it? Click, click. I don't know if it works that way on your side or not. I think it does because I'm on the same web page. But that's kind of it. That's the only zoom you get. It is definitely not a Google map. Sorry about that. Sorry about all that. All right. Let's check our camera angles. Those look good. I feel like I could come back just a little bit on this. I really could. I wonder if I can make that happen. I need to take my camera and kind of push it back just a little. The problem, there's a whole logistics, physics problem when working with cameras and lighting that you're just never quite sure exactly the best way to set it up. 2 minutes until we get started. This is not the show. This is the pre-show. For those of you just getting here, thanks for joining us. Settle right in. We will get started in just a moment. If you're your first time here, we will go through instructions and details and everything you need to know as we get things started here. Wow, there's a lot I have to do in the next 24 hours. Do we have the same mouse pad? This is the best, isn't it? It's like the entire desk. For those that haven't seen this mouse pad, it's the entire desk. It's an enormous sized relief picture. It's sort of an interesting view. I needed something just other than black, which we could do as well. But I like having a little design there. That's kind of the way that works. I should put that one on professormesser.com/studio, which is where I document all of the things that are in here. The mouse, the keyboard, the video switcher, the audio, the camera, the everything. I just kind of keep up with that. So I need to put that on there too. I'm charging my phone. Everything's being charged right now. I have UPS systems with USB connections on it, so we can recharge those. There's always something we have to work through. 1 minute to go. 1 minute, Mr. Sinatra, and we'll get things started here on the live stream. I should probably check and make sure that I have everything I need. Yes, everything seems to be working the way we would expect. Okay, we are recording. There's my Cylons down here doing that. Everything looks very good on the stream. Stream health is good. Everything's working pretty well. Now it's all about our study group. We'll get through the study group content, and then I get to do a lot of work around the house, moving things inside and making sure nothing flies away over the next 2 days. This is why, by the way, and we'll talk about it in a moment, this is why we're not doing a live stream on Thursday. For those of you wondering, like, are you going to do one of these live streams? No, we moved it. We'll talk about that in just a moment. There it is, top of the hour. Let's see if we can get Keynote going. Let's see if Keynote will give us a green light. It did. Now we can hit the play button. I can't watch myself hit the play button. There we go. That works. And I think it's time for a live stream. Let's cue it up. And here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the October 2024 Professor Messer 220-1101 Core 1 A+ study group. This is the study group where I ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives, and hopefully you'll be able to follow along with us. If you're here live, you can follow along live and answer the questions. If you're watching this on a replay, it works just as well. You can still follow us as we are stepping through all of the questions that are here. We have a lot to go through today, so let me quickly give you a question to start us off, and then we have some things to talk about with scheduling and a few announcements before we really get into this. But I will, of course, let you know that we will be able to have you follow along with us on this live stream. All you need to do is pop open a new browser window and head over to the URL that you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. QA stands for something. I'll have to figure that out. There is an app you can get called the Vevox app, but the current method that the Vevox app uses to get you to the Q&A is to take you to the web page that I list there as professormesser.com/QA. So it's sort of a little bit backwards as we focus on that, but that is how you will be able to answer questions as we are here. If you're watching this in the replay, that obviously won't be available for real-time voting, but you can follow along with us and see how everybody else votes. Now, if you do that, there will be a question waiting for you, and that question is one from last month. And that's because I like to have what I call a rewind question available so that we can figure out if we are in there asking questions the way we would expect. So this question for you asks, a company is connecting two locations in the same city over a high-speed Ethernet link. Which of the following would best describe this network type? Would it be WAN, WLAN, LAN, SAN, or MAN? We got a few there to choose from. A company is connecting two locations in the same city over a high-speed Ethernet link. Which of the following would best describe this Ethernet type? Would it be WAN, WLAN, LAN, SAN, or MAN? Now, if you know the answer, there's a link on your screen. Please follow that link to answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. This is where you want to go to answer all of the questions that we do today. That's our standing rule. So follow that link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. And we will come back to that question in just a moment. We have a couple of extra things to go through before we get there. Now, we also have a lot to go through. And before we get into that, I'll of course remind you that our entire A+ course is available on YouTube to watch for free. Every minute of every video. Go to professormesser.com/QA to see the questions today. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube to subscribe to our YouTube. Go to professormesser.com/Twitter/Instagram. You're sort of seeing a trend here. If you want to find us online, you go to professormesser.com/ the name of that site you would like to find us on. The Twitter and the Instagram are interesting. Twitter, of course, is now X. Instagram is now Instagram, but it's the same. We have a daily A+ pop quiz question, and that is one that is available on the Twitter and Instagram links. We also can send you an email with that. Those links to join that email group are on our website at professormesser.com. Also let you know that somewhere in this first hour, I will be giving you a special code word and instructions on how you can earn a 1-hour webinar category CEU. That is a continuing education unit. If you don't know what a CEU is, then it's not something you need to worry about. But if you are already certified and you're collecting these continuing education units for renewal, you'll probably want to think about that. So we will get to those somewhere in this first hour. You have to keep an ear out for that one, but we'll talk all about it when we get to that point. Today, we will be going through questions that come from topics associated with the 220-1101 exam. That is the latest A+ version. It's the only A+ version at the moment. There's two exams that you have to pass to earn your A+ certification. It is the 220-1101 and the 220-1102. These were released on April the 20th of 2022, and they should be retiring somewhere around the end of this year, or next year rather, not this year. We've got a year before these go away. It's probably even going to be later than October. I think it probably will be November, but we're not sure yet. CompTIA has not given us a correct date. But the important thing to remember is that if you are currently studying for the 2201101 and the 2201102, you are studying the right versions. These are the ones you need to study to earn your A+. If you're studying now, you'll be certified before any of this conversion process ever happens anyway, because you will be ready to go. These two exams are 90 minutes each. They consist of two separate exams that are graded in different ways. One of them is the 1101. You need a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900 to pass that exam. And the 2201102, or the Core 2 exam, you need a 700. You have to do a little bit better on that one. The exam itself, once you pass that exam, even though this exam retires in October, once you're certified, your certification's good for 3 years. So it really doesn't matter when they change the exam types once you earn your certification. You won't even know when they're changing exams because it doesn't matter to you anymore. So your goal is to get your certification, get it locked in for 3 years, and then all you have to do is renew from that point forward. You'll never need to take these exams again. These exams consist of different topics. Today, we're going to study topics from the 2201101 that consists of mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and hardware and network troubleshooting. Also let you know that a replay of this will be available on YouTube immediately afterwards. There will also be a podcast version available, an audio-only version that you can find at professormesser.com/podcast. So if you have a podcast listening program you'd like to listen in, you can have it automatically download to your device with the links that you will find on that page. If you prefer listening to your podcast on a streaming service like Spotify, then all you have to do is search for Professor Messer on Spotify, and you'll find all of the previous study groups on there as well. Might be something that can help you while you're driving, while you're working out, or while you can't look at a screen. Now you have an audio version of this to go along with you. About a day later, if you go over to our YouTube channel, you'll notice that the YouTube video description will have an interesting set of marks on it. These are timestamps. They are put there thanks to my marketing manager, Lori, who's watching this in the replay. Hey, Lori. She is going through and putting in exactly what we are doing and when we are doing it so that you can simply click on the timestamp to get to exactly where you would like to go in this entire stream. That can help you a lot when you're trying to find that little bit of information that you were trying to catch up on. Thank you, Lori, for doing this. And if something you like to enjoy, Lori's watching the replay, the chat replay as it goes by, you're welcome to give her a thank you as well in the chat if that's something that you can use. Let's also talk about what we're doing when we're not here. When we're not avoiding any type of storm here in Florida, we are on our Discord. It's a great way to meet other people who are studying for their A+ certification, their Network Plus, their Security Plus, and other certs. You can find that at professormesser.com/Discord. We'd love you to join us. We have a great community there of thousands of people who have joined the Discord. We'd love to have you join us as well. That can be found again at professormesser.com/Discord. Eventually, you will need to take your exam. And of course, you could go to the CompTIA website and purchase your voucher to take this exam, and you would pay full price. But why would you do that when there are discounted vouchers available at professormesser.com/vouchers? If you're in the U.S., Canada, or a U.S. territory, you can go to professormesser.com/vouchers and find discounted vouchers for any of the CompTIA exams. A good way to save yourself a couple of bucks. Not only do you save yourself some money, but I give you something that you can't get over at the CompTIA website, which is a book that I wrote called The Exam Hacks for the CompTIA exam. This Exam Hacks ebook can give you tips and tricks about how to study for this exam and tips that can help you during the exam itself. Might give you a couple of extra points. Sometimes those couple of extra points can be the difference between passing and failing, and that's just something you get for free when you purchase the voucher at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's talk about that question we went through earlier. The question asked, a company is connecting two locations in the same city over a high-speed Ethernet link. Which of the following would best describe this network type? Would it be WAN, WLAN, LAN, SAN, or MAN? Let's see how you did on this one. We'll stop our poll, and we can see we did a little better this month than we did last, because this is our rewind question from last month. 61% of you say the answer is MAN. We have 19% that say the answer is WAN. We have 14% that say the answer is WLAN. 6% say LAN. 0% say SAN. Poor SAN. He doesn't have anyone there. So the real question is, when you are connecting in the same city with this high-speed connection, you're in this metropolitan area. And it would be great if there was some type of network in that metropolitan area that we can connect to. And very often, the local exchange carrier for your particular geography will have a local network. And that local network is called a metropolitan area network, or a MAN, buddy. So the MAN is, as I say here, a little bit larger than a LAN, which is your local area network, which is usually at a single location or a single campus. And it's much smaller than a WAN, because a WAN tends to go much farther out than something that may be in our own city. We go to the next county over, the next state over, the next country over, would be a wide area network. So if we are looking at a metropolitan area network, you may even have other options you don't often have when going further. It's things like a higher speed connection, things like a metro Ethernet, where they simply give you an Ethernet connection, and then you can very easily connect to a high-speed link between all of your local sites. A lot of governments have a MAN on their connection because local governments have right-of-way. They have the ability to put their own fiber in the ground. It's a very inexpensive way to easily connect all of their sites together over a high-speed network. So when we're talking about being in the same city, we are talking about a metropolitan area network. 61% of you chose that one, and you got it absolutely correct. That is the correct answer. We also have 19% that said WAN. WAN would obviously be a little bit further than the local city, in the same city, which is what we say right there. So it would not really be a WAN. WLAN is a wireless local area network. So your 802.11 local router that you have, that's a wireless router, that's a WLAN. We got a LAN, which is kind of the Ethernet side of things, kind of the non-wireless connectivity in your local area, which would be in the same building or the same campus. And then a SAN is the storage area network. No one chose that one. So in this case, the answer and the one we were looking for was indeed MAN, buddy. MAN, 61% of you got that one right. That is the right answer. I think some of you remembered from last month. Well done. Let's now do some new questions, though. This next question I have for you is a question that is not a multiple choice question. It is a performance-based question. Performance-based questions are a series of questions you get at the beginning of your exam. Usually it's about a handful of questions. And the performance-based questions are often anything but multiple choice. It could be fill in the blank. It could be putting you at a command prompt and asking you to perform a function. It might be a matching question. It might be a drag and drop question. It might be a pull down question. There's a lot of different ways to ask these questions. The important part, though, is that the topic of the performance-based questions come directly from the exam objectives. So as I often say, if you know your objectives, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. But to give us some practice, I have for you a performance-based question that we're going to start with today. This is sort of a fill-in-the-blank kind of question, and it asks, input the colors for a T568A wired connector. And you can see that I have on the screen 8 different pins that are listed for the T568A. Now we have to know, what are those colors? As you may recall from the exam objectives, there are 2 different standards that we need to know for colors that are used for the wires on our Ethernet links. So this is what we are looking for here, is that standard. One of those standards, the A standard. The other is the B standard. So those are the 2 we tend to use If you run into an environment that's not using T568A and T568B, then you should probably be asking them some very important questions about why it's not T568A and 568B. I was reading a Reddit post recently, over this last week, I believe, where someone had mentioned that they started work somewhere and they just had their own coloring scheme. And they just made it up themselves. And the problem was they had rewired a punch down connection with, I think, T568B, and nothing would work because it was wired completely different on the other side. That's not something you want to run into. That's why we have these standards. It's why it's important that you know what these standards are. And it's why it's important that you know this particular standard so you can pick up a cable, look at the wires inside of that RJ45, just hold it up so that you can see the colors in there, and you should be able to determine how this pinout is on both sides of the cable and what wiring standard they are using. That's going to be an important part. If you ever have to rewire, repunch down, re-terminate connections, you will need to know that. Input those colors for a T568A connection. You need to put those in. Follow the link that's on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to be able to put in those particular answers. This is a pretty good one. It's more of a fill in the blank. I did not even give you what the colors were. So I made it a little bit harder by not listing out the colors. I wanted you to tell me what those colors are. So see if you can put those into the mix. A lot of you are giving me the colors. A lot of great answers coming in, by the way, for these colors. So this would be a good one. All of your answers, by the way, should go over to the link that's on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answers. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We're going to see if we happen to know what this one is. Figure out the details. This is really the challenge. I can remember the colors pretty well. I know what colors should be in here, but as some folks are saying in the chat room, sometimes it's difficult to know which one goes where. So let's see how we did with this one. We want to select the colors for a T568A connector. So the colors are, let's see if you got this one right. Let's reveal what these colors happen to be for the T568A. There they are. So you can see for the 568A, we have these 8 pins going all the way across the connector. You can see the bottom of the connector is here, and the top of the connector where the copper happens to be is numbered 1 through 8. And for a T568A, there are 4 of these colors that are the same for both A and B. That means there are 4 of these colors that are different between A and B. So really, as long as you memorize those 4 that never change, the only thing you have to know are the differences. And the differences are pretty easy to figure that one out to be able to do this. So for T568A, pin 1 is the white green, and pin 2 is the solid green. Pin 3 is the white orange, and pin 6 is the solid orange. So those are the 2 pair of colors that switch between A and B. The 2 that will always stay in place, regardless of the standard, are pins 4 and 5, the ones right in the middle. Pin 4 is the solid blue. Pin 5 is the white and blue. And then pin 7 and 8 also don't change. Pin 7 is the white and brown. And then the pin 8 is the solid brown. So those are the ones that you will run into. Generally, in an environment that you would walk into, anybody's data center, you're walking onto the floor of a building where a company has their network, you will either find T568A or T568B. Now, which one someone is using is usually something that was determined a very long time ago. And very often, I tend to find more T568B. But I have people who are in government that say we tend to see more 568A. So it really just depends which one was ever chosen at the very beginning. That's the real important part of this. The thing to keep in mind is both of them work exactly the same. One doesn't work any better or worse than the other. The important part is that you just make sure they are exactly the same on both ends of the cable so that you can make sure you have the very best throughput and that you don't run into any type of significant configuration problems. That's what we want to do. is focus on those colors. Make sure you know the differences between the T568A and the T568B. And once you go through rewiring and punching down a couple of these, they pretty much get embedded into your brain with no problem. You will, of course, need to know this. It is directly from the exam objectives, so make sure that you refer back to the exam objectives to understand exactly what you need to know for the exam, and this would certainly be one of those things that you need to know. That is our performance-based question of the month. We do a different performance-based question every month, so check back next month. We'll do a different one for you. Let's now jump back to a multiple choice question. This next question on our list asks this. It says, a ticket describes a problem with an ADF. Which of the following would be the most likely issue? Would this be network switching, display setting, flatbed scanning, wireless keyboard, or load balancing? If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. The question again asks, a ticket describes a problem with an ADF. Which of the following would be the most likely issue? Would this be network switching, display setting, flatbed scanning, wireless keyboard, or load balancing? We have to know these abbreviations for the exam. Notice that I'm not asking you what ADF is, and this is something you will commonly see on the exam. You will not get a trivia question about acronyms on your exam. You will not get a question that says, what does ADF stand for? They will never ask you that. In fact, they don't really care if you know what the answer is, because you have to know how to apply that particular technology. So if you are studying these acronyms and trying to memorize all of them, I think most of the acronyms we tend to learn organically as we go through the study materials. But if you are someone who is just trying to really get them down, don't just learn the name and the acronym. Make sure you understand how you would use them or how they would apply, and you would be in much better shape for the exam. I think you will see that very consistently done throughout the entire exam. So make sure that's an important part of this. Make sure you're very, very familiar with that. So let's see how you did with this one. The question again asks, a ticket describes a problem with an ADF. Which of the following would be the most likely issue? Would this be network switching, display setting, flatbed scanning, wireless keyboard, or load balancing? We will stop our view here, and we have a number of different options that have come through. A lot of double digits on this one, but the one that got the most was 56% of you that say the answer is flatbed scanning. 18% of you say the answer is network switching. 11% say display setting, and 13% said load balancing. Almost a three-way tie for second place. Maybe network switching we'll put in second place, and a tie for third. And then in last place, wireless keyboard got 0% for doing that. So this is a good place if you're someone who's trying to figure out ADF and what the ADF would be used for. If you ever run into this, it's going to be something related to a flatbed scanner. The 56% of you said the answer was flatbed scanner, and there it is. There's somebody scanning on the flat bed. We call it a flatbed scanner because it's one where you're not putting something into a machine and it's going through an entire paper path to be able to do this. You can take a book, for example, and put it on the top and it will scan that book, kind of like the older style copiers back in the day. These often will have on them an ADF. That stands for an automatic document feeder. So here, for example, are a lot of loose pages on the top of this scanner. And this is an automatic document feeder. It will feed in one of these at a time, allow you to scan that page, make that automatically shoot that page out into a separate tray and bring in the next page. So you can put 50 pages of paper in there that you need to scan, and it will go through them one page at a time and simply scan them automatically, feeding the documents through the scanner. Usually it's a multifunction printer. So that's why we call it an automatic document feeder, an ADF, because it is automatically feeding those documents. Maybe it's a little self-obvious when we start breaking down. Sometimes when you know what the abbreviation is, it's very clear. automatic document feeder. You can kind of figure that out based on that. But one of the problems you will run into is that some of those abbreviations don't give you any idea of what it happens to be. In this case, helped us out a lot if we happen to know what that acronym was in this particular case. That is what we were hoping to find. Automatic document feeders are found on flatbed scanners, among other things. If you have a copier, you've probably seen an automatic document feeder on a copier as it's bringing in the pages that it needs to copy. So we see this technology in a lot of different places. Network switching would not be ADF. That's not really where we're having a problem. The problems with the ADF, certainly the scanner could be connected to the network, but the ADF is not connected to the network. That's not really the best or most likely issue given the options that are available here. Also would not be display settings, and ADF has nothing to do with your display or the screen that you're looking at. We don't have any load balancing issues with ADF. There's no load balancing between an automatic document feeder, so that's not the issue. And a wireless keyboard, 0% chose that one. Maybe we just don't think there's ever a problem with our wireless keyboards, although I think we know that's not the case either. But in this case, an ADF has nothing to do with a wireless keyboard. It is all about the scanner, in this case, the flatbed scanner, and 56% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Let's do another question. This next multiple choice question asks, after a budget increase, a company has decided to increase the amount of data stored on a cloud server. Which of the following would best describe this decision? Would that be, got a lot of things on the screen here. Would that be, here we go. Here it is, high availability, rapid elasticity, metered service, file synchronization, or virtual desktop infrastructure? Got a few things going on there. After a budget increase, a company has decided to increase the amount of data stored on a cloud server. Which of the following would best describe this decision? Would it be high availability, rapid elasticity, metered service, file synchronization, or virtual desktop infrastructure? If you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We will see if you know the answer. A lot of people locking their answers in pretty quick on this one. I think we're pretty well versed on some of these cloud technologies. Maybe this is one that you are very familiar with, or maybe you've recently increased your budget and maybe you're increasing the amount of data stored in a cloud server, so you already know this. It's one of those situations where you're never quite sure. If you know the answer or we don't know the answer, when I see a lot of people answering quickly, I'm either thinking we all think we know what the answer is, or maybe we all really do know what the answer is. I'm not looking at your responses. I can behind the scenes look if I wanted to, but that kind of spoils the whole thing. I like to be surprised along with you. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, after a budget increase, a company has decided to increase the amount of data stored on a cloud server. Which of the following would best describe this decision? High availability, rapid elasticity, metered service, file synchronization, or virtual desktop infrastructure? Well, what did you choose? We will close the poll, and we can see that 46% of you, almost half of you, say the answer is rapid elasticity. 18% say the answer is metered service. And in third place, high availability at 16%. We have virtual desktop infrastructure at 12%, and at single digits at 6% is file synchronization. Well, in this case, we got more money, so we could increase the amount of data that we're storing on our cloud services. So that's a direct correlation. We are spending more money because we're putting more data out there. And when those particular situations occur, that's because these services have a cost associated with them. If you store more data, it costs more money. If you store less data, it costs less money. Now, not all cloud services are that way. We refer to that type of measurement as a metered service. That means that the more we use the service, the more money we will pay. The less we use the service, the less money we will pay. This makes it a little bit difficult for trying to budget because you never know from one month to the other how much money you're going to spend because it's going to depend on how busy you are. So that's one of those very important things to consider. That's a little different. A lot of us have, maybe you're using iCloud, maybe you're using Dropbox, maybe you're using box.com, maybe you're using one of these other file sharing services, maybe Google Drive. And if you've ever used one of those, you know that you pay a fixed price every month. If you put 1 megabyte on Google Drive, it costs the same per month as if you put 100 megabytes on Google Drive. We refer to those as a non-metered service because it doesn't matter how much you use it, it's a fixed price. That certainly helps for budgeting. It certainly helps from a business perspective because you know exactly how much you're going to spend throughout the month. But it's also limiting in a number of different ways. There's usually a cap. And if you overuse the service, they often come back to you and say, you're abusing the service at this point. You now need to pay for a metered service so that you can pay as you go kind of scenario. That is the answer that we were looking for. A metered cloud service is one that will give us different prices depending on how much we spend. And that's why 18% of you chose metered service. That was the answer we were looking for. Now, 46% of you chose rapid elasticity, probably because it sounds awesome. It's a great sounding set of terms that we use there. But that refers to the ability to scale up when things get very busy and scale down when they do not. Really doesn't have anything to do with budgeting per se. Has to do with being able to greatly expand or contract the size of your cloud footprint as the demand is either incurred or the demand goes away. So that's an important one to consider if you're someone who is working through the details of these different cloud characteristics. Nothing in our question asked about the use of the cloud or there was more activity. In fact, we very specifically said it was related to a budget increase. There's a dollar figure associated with this, which should lead you directly to the idea of it being a metered service. So in this case, rapid elasticity was not part of the question, would not be the best description of what we were doing. Certainly there may be an aspect of this because if we are storing more files, maybe there is an application that does more with the files. I don't know. But since that's not part of the question, we can't read into it. And that's an important consideration for those of you studying for this exam. Don't try to make up a backstory to a question. The question is very limited in scope. It's giving you exactly the information you need. You can't go outside the scope of that question, nor should you. So that's another important part of that. High availability was 16% of you. There was nothing about increasing the amount of data stored on a server that would make it more or less available. So in this case, high availability would not be the answer we were looking for. VDI, or virtual desktop infrastructure, is the idea of taking the desktop that you have with a computer on your desk and moving that desktop into the cloud itself. Very easy way to centrally manage all of your systems, but it requires that you have some type of front end to be able to access that particular desktop. Often the front end is one that you can use from many different platforms, and it's exactly the same desktop no matter the platform. So VDI, although an interesting technology, has nothing to do with increasing the amount of data because we got more money in our budget. And file synchronization, although this may include file synchronization, this might also not include file synchronization. All we know is that we're storing more data. We may not even be synchronizing that data anywhere. It may only be on a single server. Again, we have to stick to what we know in the question. There was no mention in the question of any synchronization. There's nothing in the question about expanding the footprint or the scope of our cloud services. Therefore, the only thing that really fits into this mix, the one that would best describe this decision, is about the metered service, and 18% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. So as you can already tell, there are a lot of different topics on this exam. There are topics dealing with networking and troubleshooting and security and cloud services and understanding cables. And we've already gone through a number of those already in this live stream. One of the things that often I tell people is you really should watch the videos. The videos themselves are, though, 137 A+ videos over 19 hours of content. And although I would love it if every single person was able to watch all 137 videos, sometimes we just don't have that amount of time available to do that. So what I've done is take all of this information that normally would be something hidden in the videos or saved in the videos somewhere, and I put them on a set of course notes. These course notes are available in a digital PDF format that you see on the screen here. You can see it's a listing of all of the text from these videos, all of the important graphics, all of the important tables. They are in the course notes. Not only is there a digital version of these course notes, there's also a physical version that you can get. The physical version is a physical book. It's nothing too different than what you would normally find. There's a better shot. There we go. The physical book. And it's exactly the same. You can see the images in here. In fact, I can bring up one of those pages that shows some of the same images that we were working with there, the same graphics, the same text. It's all in there exactly the same as the digital. It's just in a format that you have in a physical form that you can carry around, no batteries required. So another great thing to have. If you get the physical version, then you get the digital version for free. So it's another nice benefit. So while you're waiting for this to be shipped to you, I will, of course, have it so that you can download the digital version immediately and start reading it right away. Just another one of those things that can help you with your studies. Another thing to think about, if this is something you think might help you can read more about it on my site. Go to professormesser.com/1101notes or simply follow the menus that are at the top of the site. This is another great way to also support the website, keep things going here, and keep more of these live streams happening. We thank you so much for your continued support with that. Speaking of continuing, let's do another question. I've got another multiple choice question here for you. This multiple choice question asks, a technician has received a report from a NAS showing an increase in the seek error rate values. Which of the following would be the most likely source of this information? Would that be UEFI BIOS, SMART, multi-channel RAM, SNMP console, or access point? A technician has received a report from a NAS showing an increase in the seek error rate values. Which of the following would be the most likely source of this information? Would it be UEFI BIOS, SMART, multi-channel RAM, SNMP console, or access point? If you think you know the answer, go to this link, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your question. This should be one that some of us are already familiar with, and certainly all of the topics that you see listed as answers are from the exam objectives. So again, this is another important consideration. It's not always that way on your actual exam, but on the questions I give you, I like to be sure to fill all of the answers with things you should know. So if you happen to see an answer as we're going through these questions and you don't recognize the topic, or it's not something you think you're very strong on, make a note of it so that you can go back and study up a little bit more on that topic, because you might go into your exam and that's the topic of the question that you get on your actual exam. Another good idea. Some people were even asking earlier, if we don't know the answer, should we just guess? Well, for the purposes of our study group, of course you should guess, but also for the purposes of your actual exam. We don't know a lot about the actual exam grading method because CompTIA doesn't share that information. But one thing we do know is that if you don't answer, you don't get points. And if you get a question wrong, you also don't get points. But it doesn't take any points away. You aren't penalized for trying. So if you don't know the answer, just take a guess. All it can do is help you. So that's another thing. Never leave a question blank on your exam. Before you submit that exam, make sure you at least plug something in. Take an educated guess in going through this and figure out what you think the answer might be. Speaking of guesses, let's see what you answered. The question is, a technician has received a report from a NAS showing an increase in the seek error rate values. Which of the following would be the most likely source of this information? Would it be UEFI BIOS, SMART, multi-channel RAM, SNMP console, or access point? Let's see what you answered. 45% of you say the answer is SMART. We have 17% say SNMP console, 15% say access point, 11% say UEFI BIOS, and 10% say multi-channel RAM. This is a good question for the people that deal a lot with storage drives, because we were talking, and this question is about a NAS, a network attached storage. Network attached storage has a bunch of drives on it. Usually these are spinning hard drives, not always that way, but very often when we have that much storage that's sitting somewhere. Today, the most cost-effective cost per terabyte for those is a very good example of something that would involve a spinning hard drive. A number of these storage drives have a lot of smarts inside of them, to borrow a phrase, SMART being S-M-A-R-T. SMART is the self-monitoring, analysis, and reporting technology. I have a feeling somebody backronymed that one, don't you think? It's probably what happened on that one. The storage drives are effectively keeping track of a lot of statistics on the drive itself. They have their own built-in storage. They have the storage that's on those drives for the management of that drive is something that keeps track of these statistics even when the device is powered down. So you can grab a drive that you've had on the shelf for a year, plug it in, and you'll see all of the statistics that have been gathered on that drive for the entire lifetime of that storage drive. The way that we're able to pull this information off the drive is using a standard known as SMART. That SMART standard is the same across all of these drives, which means that we can use software to be able to query those drives and determine how healthy the drive is performing. We can often get information that might tell us this drive is running into problems. We might have a large number of errors, or it can even tell us how much this drive has been used by the amount of times the drive has been power cycled or the amount of uptime on the drive. All of this is being stored as part of those SMART statistics. Normally, we would need to use a piece of software that was specifically designed to query that drive and pull those SMART statistics to be able to bring that to the forefront so we can see what's going on there. SMART is a very, very useful set of statistics. If you've never queried your own drives, you might want to grab one of the free and open source utilities that you can use. And very often, the drive manufacturer themselves will have a utility that allows you to access those SMART statistics to be able to see what's going on. And this is one I pulled up on my NAS that shows all of the SMART statistics on the NAS itself. This happened to be a Synology NAS that I pulled this off of. So a great way to get statistics. And indeed, if you were smart enough to choose that answer, so sorry, that was the correct response. S-M-A-R-T, SMART. 45% of you got that one absolutely correct. That is the right answer. Why would it not be some of these others? We have 17% of you that shows SNMP console. SNMP consoles, of course, are the simple network management protocol. These tend to show us information about a system, and on some systems, there might be a MIB that allows us access to the SMART statistics that we could ultimately get on the SNMP console. But boy, that's a lot of hops you got to get to finally get to that information. In the list of things that we have here, although SNMP console is a possibility, it is not the most likely source of this information. And because of that, we would not choose that as the correct answer. This is something you'll often see on the exam, by the way, is that there will be multiple answers that could technically be correct, but only one of them would be the most likely source. Another good example of that is UEFI BIOS. There are UEFI BIOS, the basic input-output system of your computer, could possibly tell you information about the SMART statistics of a connected storage drive. And although that is a place where you can gather that information, you probably are not going to be able to look at the UEFI BIOS of a NAS while it's running. You have to reboot the system just to be able to see the BIOS statistics. So that's probably not what you would be doing either. You probably don't want to reboot your NAS in the middle of the day to be able to make that happen. So would not be the one, although it could be in there, probably not the most likely source of that information. We also have access points in the SMART statistics, and the problems that we're seeing with seek error rate values on a network attached storage are probably not associated with your wireless network, so it would not be an access point. And this is not related to RAM. This is related to a storage drive, so it would not be multi-channel read or multi-channel RAM in this case. That random access memory is not something that provides us with SMART statistics. They have their own set of statistics. When RAM goes bad, you'll know it. It's not one where we have to slowly see errors that are occurring. So in this case, something that is a seek error rate clearly associated with a storage drive. And indeed, SMART is the right answer. SMART, 45% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Let's do another question. Let's see if you know this one. This may be one we can bounce back. See how you do with this one. The question asks, a company is installing a new MDM. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this installation? Would this be to back up SAN drives, monitor internet bandwidth, securely store server certificates, install phone apps, or print 3D objects? A company is installing a new MDM. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this installation? Is it backup SAN drives, monitor internet bandwidth, securely store server certificates, install phone apps, or print 3D objects? You think you know the answer? Go to the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See what you happen to know. One of the things you'll find, and a lot of people are asking about this in the chat, about questions that ask you to pick the best answer, pick the most likely answer, pick the answer that is the best one. And a lot of people are concerned over questions like this because if there are multiple answers that could be correct, how do you know which one is best? Well, I think you saw from the last one that getting SMART statistics is the very obvious way to gather that intel. So it should be a very, very clear, as long as you know all of the different technologies and how they work, it will be very, very obvious which one is really the best answer on those. So my only recommendation to you is if you get one of these questions and you aren't sure, you want to go one or the other, it tends to lean one way or the other, then you need to go back and look at both of those technologies to get better understanding of them, because it should really be very, very clear to you. And on your exam, it will be extremely clear which one really is the best choice of those. I've seen some pretty badly written questions on the internet, and a lot of people will read those very badly written questions from a third party on the internet, and they'll be concerned that the exam is also badly written questions like the third party, but that's actually not the case. The questions on your exam are actually pretty straightforward. It's going to be very clear in questions like that which one it is. So don't worry so much about that. Now, what you see on third-party websites is very often not even close to what you will find on the actual exam. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a company is installing a new MDM. Which of the following would be the most likely use of this installation? Is it to back up SAN drives, monitor internet bandwidth, securely store server certificates, install phone apps, or print 3D objects? Let's stop our poll and see how you did. 77% of you say the answer is install phone apps. Everything else is single digits. So we have monitor internet bandwidth at 9%. We have backup SAN drives is at 5%. Securely store server certificates is 4%. And print 3D objects is 2%. Well, obviously this question focuses on that abbreviation of MDM. And again, we have to know what that is and how we would use it. And from the approach of the exam, the things we talked about earlier, knowing the abbreviation might be able to help you, but understanding how to implement that particular technology is really what CompTIA wants to know. So in this case, installing the phone apps was 77% of you. You probably chose that because the MDM abbreviation stands for Mobile Device Management. In this case, the words associated with the acronym are the words that actually solve the question for us in this case. A mobile device management is a workstation, a management console that allows us to control the inner workings of the mobile devices in an environment, in a company, in an organization. So that is where you would go to be able to understand how to configure, set up, monitor, track, and control the features of these mobile devices. So if you're somebody who is trying to install certain applications, you can go to your mobile device manager and you can tell the mobile device manager, install this application on everybody's phone, and it will install that application on everyone's phone. You can go to the mobile device manager and click a button that says disable the camera on everyone's phone. Immediately, everyone's camera no longer works on their phones. You may be wondering, why would you want to do that? Well, a number of you clearly have not worked in a high security environment before, because that is exactly what they do on their mobile device managers. I've gone into a lot of companies and a lot of organizations, and some of them require you to check your phone when you walk into the building. You walk in, hi, my name is James. I'm here for a meeting. They go, great. Here's your badge. Give me your phone. And they take your phone from you and they put it away. They say, when you come out, we'll give you your phone back, but you may not take this phone into our building. And the same thing applies for other things too. In fact, they'll tell us, can't bring your laptop, can't bring your phone. You can come in with a pad of paper. That's what you can do. And they'll have a computer and they'll be able to connect to the internet. And you can do those types of things. You can still use demonstrations and be able to have your meeting, but you can't bring anything into the building that will be able to capture data, take pictures, or anything else. And if you are walking into those very secure environments, they're probably using an MDM to help control what's happening on their employees' phones. And that's what they would use, is the mobile device manager. That is indeed what we were looking for here. The answer is install phone apps. You can certainly control what apps are going to be installed on a device using an MDM. But what about these other options? Backing up the SAN drives. We don't use an MDM for backups. That's only to manage mobile devices. So that's not the right answer. Monitoring internet bandwidth. Although an MDM can give us information and statistics about the usage of these mobile devices, we don't commonly use an MDM to monitor internet bandwidth. We'd probably use our SNMP monitoring station to be able to do something like that. Securely storing server certificates would be an HSM. HSMs are commonly put into a data center to manage large amounts of certificates for web servers. It's not something that an MDM would use. And then printing 3D objects. Well, we use a 3D printer for that, not an MDM. So that would not be the answer. Only 2% of you chose that one. But the 77% of you that chose install phone apps got it absolutely right. That is what we were looking for. That is the answer. And if you're putting in an MDM, you now have complete control of where these devices are, what they're doing, how to configure them, what's allowed, what's not allowed. You can partition off different parts of it. Does everything there. So make sure you're familiar with MDMs and the technologies and all of the technologies that we see here, because there may be questions on your exam about that. If you are watching this video for Continuing Education Unit Credit, or CEU credit, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. The way that we would do that is following these instructions. You'll go to the top or bottom of the Professor Messer website. At the top and the bottom is a link that says Contact Us. The Contact Us would allow, it brings up a web page, it brings up a form, and on that form, please put your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put October 2024 Core 1, or maybe October Core 1, something like that, so I know what study group this happened to be. And then in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, install phone apps. That's what we're looking for as our super secret code words of the month. Install phone apps. And once you do that, you can also put any other text you would like in there. I read through all of these. I'm not able to respond back to all of them, but I do like reading the things that you put into the messages, or you can simply just click the send button. You don't have to put anything else in there. And it takes me about a week to turn these around. It might take a little bit longer than a week this week, for those of you that were here for the pre-show, but I do get back to you and I send these back to you with a CEU that you can use if you're collecting CEUs to renew your certification. If you don't have a certification, none of that applies to you. Again, the process, and you must follow the process or you don't get the CEU. Go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. In the Contact Us link, put your name, your email address, put October 2024 Core 1, and in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, install phone apps. And then wait about a week. until my power comes back on. And then I will send you an email with all of that. So that's how it works. We will see how it works this week. Be patient with me. If you do need the CEUs faster than that, though, send me a separate note saying, I am desperate. Please help me. Send me the CEUs as soon as possible, and I will gladly do that. I sometimes can prioritize those a little bit more than others on that link. Let's do another question. I know we're near the top of the hour. We can squeeze another one in, right? Let's get this question going. This question asks, a user is authenticating to a VPN concentrator. Which of the following would be used to validate this user's credentials? Would it be TCP 3389, UDP 161, TCP 25, TCP 443, or TCP 389? We can thank the person in the chat room who said, wait, don't we get port numbers on this? Yes, you do. Here they are. So those of you that asked that, I knew when you saw the question that you thought you knew the answer, but maybe you didn't. The question again asks, a user is authenticating to a VPN concentrator. Which of the following would be used to validate this user's credentials? Is it TCP 3389, UDP 161, TCP 25, TCP 443, TCP 389? Those are the port numbers we need to know. Again, this is one of those where we have to know the technologies behind the numbers. We don't just need to know the port number and the protocol. We need to know what that protocol does. And this is a really good example of that. So make sure you are familiar with not just the port number and not just the name of the protocol, but when you would use that port number and when you would use that protocol, because it could pop up on your exam. This is a good example of that and making that happen. See if you know the answer. If you do, please lock in your answer right down here. Go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. This is at the networking section of the Core 1 exam. So this might be a good one if you are really trying to finalize those port numbers, understand what would be used, when you would use it. And you should do this for all of the port numbers that are listed on the A+ exam. You should not only know what the number is and what the protocol is, but when you would use it, because the question you get may be a lot like this one. A lot of you have locked in your answer. Let's see how you did. The question asks, a user is authenticating to a VPN concentrator. Which of the following would be used to validate this user's credentials? Is it TCP 3389, UDP 161, TCP 25, TCP 443, or TCP 389? We're closing the poll. Let's see how we did. We're all over the place. We have 4 of the answers are double digits. 40% of you say the answer is TCP 443. 21% say the answer is TCP 3389. 11% say UDP 161. Oh, I missed the 20% that said TCP 389. And then only 5%, the only single digit we got was TCP 25. Well, this one is kind of a conglomeration of different topics. There's a VPN concentrator, there is user credentials, and then there's the validation of those user credentials. You've probably seen this before when you're logging into to the network at work, you use a username and password. But then you need to log into the wireless network, you use the same username and password, even though it's a completely different system. And then you go home and you connect to the network through your VPN, you use the same username and password. How do all of these different systems know what your correct username and password happens to be? Do they all have a separate database? They do not. Instead, all of those systems are referring back to a single database where everything is stored. So there needs to be a way to interact with that single database. And one very common method to be able to provide that interaction or that communication on a very standard form between some service and being able to validate someone's credentials in this very large database is a protocol known as LDAP, the Lightweight Directory Access Protocol. And that protocol very commonly uses TCP port 389 to communicate. That is the one that we would use to use LDAP. Now, the idea of a directory online may not make a lot of sense, but when you start thinking about all of the different things associated with people and all of the things associated with devices on your network, it might be useful to keep all of that information in a very large database. And in fact, if you've logged into a Microsoft Active Directory network, Active Directory is one of those types of databases. In fact, there is an LDAP front end automatically included with Active Directory so that other devices like VPN concentrators can access the Microsoft Active Directory database and determine if somebody's using the correct username and password and validate those credentials. And it uses LDAP to be able to make that conversation. Imagine a VPN concentrator is probably made by a third party that's not Microsoft, and it needs to talk to a database that is stored in a format that is proprietary to Microsoft. Well, how do you link those together? Well, you use a common language, and the common language is LDAP in this particular case. There are other common languages that you could have used. You could have used Radius. You could have used TACACS. You could have used Kerberos. There's a lot of different ways to do it. But for the purposes of this question, the only port number that provided that functionality is port number 389, and the port that is commonly used, the protocol commonly used for that port 389 is LDAP. That is the protocol that would be used to validate this user's credentials, and 20% of you chose TCP 389. Now, the largest number of you that answered here, the plurality of you, 40% of you, chose TCP 443. Now, you probably saw VPN and thought, encryption. Encryption is 443. That's TLS. That's SSL. It's an SSL VPN. It's an SSL connection, or TLS, if we want to be technical about it. These days, we just still refer to it as SSL, even though it really is running and using TLS. But here, we weren't asking what the VPN was using to encrypt the data. We were asking what is being used to validate user credentials. So TCP 443 would not be used in that particular case. We have another one of these. It looks like TCP 389 was the right answer, but then we have TCP 3389 on here. That is not the protocols we would use, nor would we use UDP 161, nor would we use TCP 25. All different protocols for different purposes, whether it's remote desktop, SNMP, or performing some type of mail transfer. These are protocols that we do need to understand, and we do need to recognize them, and we do need to understand the port, the protocol, and how it's used with the technologies. So make sure you are very familiar with all of those different port numbers. There were only 5 of them on this list. There are many more that you need to know for the exam. Make sure you go through that list and are very, very familiar with every single one of those, because they could certainly show up on your exam. And that might be something you might want to memorize, because they might, once you know them, it's an easy answer. It's an easy question to get right because you're very, very familiar with them. Let's do another question. Let's get more on, but this next question is going to be one from a different source. For those of you, I mentioned earlier that there's some really bad Q&A on the internet. It's one of the things that drives me crazy is the Q&A on the internet can be really, really poor quality. I've run into some very, very bad questions on the internet, and I thought what we need are some better questions. We need questions that are written with the same style and the same tone as the actual exam. We need questions that stick to the objectives, that don't ask you about things that have nothing to do with the exam that you're currently taking. And we need questions that are focused on giving us a similar experience as the actual exam. So I wrote a book full of exam questions that take you through the same distribution, the same percentage of questions that you would expect to get on the exam, and the same style of the questions. And I put them into my practice exams book. This is a book of 3 separate practice exams. There are 90 questions on each of these practice exams, and they have multiple choice questions. There are 5 performance-based questions on each of those. So there's 15 performance-based questions in this book. And it gives you not just questions, but also detailed answers. Well, what do you mean by that? Why don't we do one? I have the book open right here. So again, no answers in the chat room. We're going to step through this question that comes from Practice Exam A. This is on page 10 of my book, question A26. And it asks, a system administrator is tripped over an Ethernet cable and the cable's RJ45 connector has broken. Which of the following should be used to resolve this issue? Should we use a punch down tool, a tone generator and probe, a cable tester, or a crimper? Those are your 4 options. Now, this is a PDF, so if you can annotate, I have an annotation here. You can start marking things that are on the screen. Maybe you have a stylus that you can use. You can start marking what you think the right answer happens to be, or change some of the things that are here. It's a PDF. You can do whatever you would like with it. And you can use that on your tablet. You can use it on your phone. You can print it out. You can do whatever makes sense, or you can get the printed book as well. Again, there's both a digital edition PDF and a physical edition printed book to go with this. But on the PDF, one of the nice things is that I show you that if you just want to know whether it's A, B, C, or D, you can go to page 31. We're on page 10 now, so you would scroll down to page 31, which is a little annoying. And then, of course, if you want more details about this answer, you would go to page 61. Well, because this is a PDF, I can simply click on the words, the details. You can see I put a little hyperlink there. It turns into the little finger there on the little hand. And if I click that, it hyperlinks over to the page with the answer. So this says, a system administrator, there's your question and the answers. And it tells you that the answer is D, crimper. And of course, like many of the questions that you find on the internet, I give you an example of, or explain to you why that is the right answer so that you'll understand why you got it right. Now, my problem is that I never get these questions right. I always get the question wrong. And I need some explanation about why I got the question wrong. So in my book, every incorrect answer is documented. So if you answered A, punch down tool, you answered B, tone generator and probe, or you answered C, cable tester, I explain why that is not the right answer and redirect you back to why the right answer is right. So in my mind, this kind of closes the education loop. It closes that nagging issue of when you get an answer wrong, why did I get it wrong? That's a great opportunity to learn in my mind. So here's something to help you fill that particular issue, to fix that particular problem, is knowing why the wrong answer is wrong so that you can also understand why the right answer is right. And I do that for every question on every exam in this book. And if you don't understand anything about the question, I've been there. I also have a link to the video that was used to create this question to begin with. So you can go back to that particular link. It's just a hot link that's here, or if you have your phone, you can use the QR code and it will link directly back to the video. In this case, it's video from Objective 2.8 and the video name is Network Tools. So you can find all of those. That is, and when you're done, by the way, this is a PDF, and you may not even realize most PDF readers have a back button, just like your browser. So I can click the back button, click, takes me right back to where I started, and I can go to the next question that's on my list. That is my practice exams book. You can find out more by going to professormesser.com/core1pe. You also have links that are on the website from the main menu. And if you purchase the practice exams in conjunction with the course notes and get them together at the same time, you get a little bit of a cost break. So a little bit of a benefit when you get more than one simultaneously. Find out more on my website, professormesser.com/core1pe, for more information about my Core 1 and Core 2 practice exams books. Well, everything we talked about today came directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. If you don't have these objectives, you need to get your hands on these. First, they're free. I love the price. No money was spent getting these objectives, and the objectives tell you everything you need to know before you walk into the exam. They're available on the CompTIA website. You can easily find this by going to professormesser.com/objectives, or you can simply go to your favorite search engine and type in CompTIA exam Objectives, it'll be the first link that it runs into. I am quite sure of that. The objectives themselves have all of the information you need to know, a bulleted list of everything that is there. So make sure you get your hands on these objectives. This should be the first thing you read before sitting down and studying. It should be the last thing you use as a checklist before scheduling your exam, just to make sure you know everything that could possibly be presented to you when you walk into that exam room. That is where you need to focus. It is your CompTIA exam objectives. We talked about these objectives over and over today. That's what we're talking about when we refer to the objectives. Make sure you get your hands on those. A very, very useful set of resources. We do one of these study groups every month. This first study group of the month, we have now finished our first hour, but stick around. We have more to come in the second hour with questions that you will ask me. We have another one of these study groups scheduled this month for Core 2. It was supposed to be on Thursday, but if you were here for the pre-show, you probably know that there will be a hurricane going over my house on Thursday. So as much as I would love to do a study group with you on Thursday, I will not have any power. So I have pushed that for a week later. Maybe that will be a good time to do it. We will find out. But you should see that the next study group is scheduled for October the 17th. That is Thursday of next week. We also have study groups already scheduled for November, on November the 5th and November the 7th. And every month we also have Network Plus study groups and Security Plus study groups. So anytime you want to know when the next live event is going to be, you can go to professormesser.com/calendar and everything will be updated there immediately. So if I have to change the dates of those additional study groups that are currently scheduled for next week, it's possible. I will make those changes online. I will somehow find a way to communicate back to you and make those changes on the website so that you will know what they happen to be. So that's where you should go, professormesser.com/calendar. Well, although our first hour is over, there's more to come. I will be asking questions that you ask of me in the second hour. We call this our after show. Stick around. That happens immediately afterwards. Here, stay right where you are. We're not going anywhere. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers and our exam hacks ebook on our website at professormesser.com/vouchers. We also have our course notes and practice exams on our website. Go to professormesser.com/1101success. And of course, we're online on social media. And if you liked this video, we would love it if you give it a thumbs up. If you're not subscribed to our YouTube channel, how are you not subscribed already? Go over to professormesser.com/YouTube and click that subscribe button for us. It does help us quite a bit, and it keeps you up to date whenever we add new videos to our channel. Another nice thing to have available in your subscribe list on YouTube. And of course, our daily pop quiz questions and other links are available at professormesser.com/Twitters, professormesser.com/Instagram, and from our website directly. Well, that brings us to the end of another first hour study group. Stick around for our after show. And of course, next week, we'll be back with a Network Plus study group and a Core 2 study group. We have 2 study groups scheduled for next week. I'm sure it will be fine. We'll be able to fit those in, no problem. In the meantime, stick around for the second hour. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next time on our Core 1A Plus study group. Okay, assuming that nothing else is going to happen in the next hour, we should be able to answer questions from you in our after show. This is after show that we work through. This after show is available for you. It's your opportunity to ask questions of me. The questions themselves might be questions you have about technology, about certifications, about IT, or really about anything. You're able to ask any question that you would like. These questions are available from that same link we had before, professormesser.com/QA. There's a little tab at the top of the page there, and you can go and submit those questions at any time. It will put them on a queue on my side, and I'll be able to break down what those happen to be. I'll be able to sort through all of those questions that are there. So that's a great place to go if you want to submit some questions. I'm going to go through these questions on my side. and sort of see what questions you have available of me. There are already questions coming in, so I'm going to sift through these in real time to be able to break through those and see if we happen to know what these are and where the differences are in all of these questions that you're sending. We've got some great ones to go through here. Let's start with a question that is about renewal. We talked about continuing education unit credits earlier today. This question from Keegan asks, I passed my 220-1101 exam this morning. Congratulations on your Core 1 exam. What does renewing a certification consist of? Well, first we have to be certified. So passing one of those A+ exams is half of what you need to do. You, of course, need to pass the other exam. And you didn't mention in this message if you had previously passed the Core 2, because, of course, you can take these exams in any order you would like. But if you pass your Core 1 exam and you pass your Core 2 exam, you're A+ certified. And as I mentioned earlier in the study group, you're A+ certified for 3 years. At the end of those 3 years, you're no longer certified. Your certification expires. It has a 3-year time frame. Anytime during that 3 years, you can renew the certification for another 3 years. So you could technically pass your second exam and earn your A+ certification. The next day, you could renew it for 3 more years, making it a 6-year certification. So there's some great benefits to renewing that as soon as you can, because it simply adds on those 3 years at the end of that particular time frame. So it doesn't just take it from when you renewed it, although there's a little bit of a caveat there, and let's talk about that. The renewal process can vary depending on the process you use for renewal. And that's another important consideration, is that there's a lot of different ways to renew your cert. Because there are many different ways to renew your cert, I made a video about it, of course. It's one of the things we do here. If you go to ProfessorMesser.com, or actually go follow the links in this YouTube video description, there is a YouTube video on how to renew your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus certification in just a few hours. And that's the one that it does explain how you can do it in just a few hours by using the CompTIA CertMaster CE. We'll talk about that in a moment. But there are other ways to renew as well. You could collect continuing education units. We talked about some of that earlier, but you can't collect just one type of CEU. You usually have to collect different types of CEUs. As much as I wish you could just watch reruns of this and collect all the CEUs you need, you can't. You have to go and do different things to be able to renew that. There are some cases where you can do one thing to renew. For example, if you took a higher level certification from CompTIA, it would also renew your certification. So for instance, if you took your A+ and you got your A+ certification, then you went back and took your Network Plus exam and passed it, the Network Plus exam renews the A+. But unlike that 3-year schedule I mentioned earlier, your renewal starts 3 years after you pass your Network Plus. So the differences in the timing of this might be important depending on the process you use to renew. There are also third-party certification exams you could take, and CompTIA makes a computer program, a computer training design program that they call CertMaster CE, Continuing Education. CertMaster CE is a CBT that allows you to take online quizzes really in their app and be able to renew your certification by simply going through this computer-based training, the CBT. The computer-based training is one that takes a number of hours to go through, but if you're tight on time, maybe you have 1 day before your certification expires, you could take CertMaster CE in just a few hours, get all the way through it, and now you're certified for another 3 years. So we have had people show up in our chat saying, my certification, it expires tomorrow. They're in our Discord and saying, what can I do right now? I don't have time to go study for another certification exam. No problem. Go take CertMaster CE. It only costs a little bit more than collecting CEUs for 3 years, but you can renew almost immediately, certainly in the same day. So if that's the case, if you're tight on time, that might be a very good way to do it too. You may not need to collect CEUs. You may just be able to take the CertMaster CE and you're done. So another good way to consider thinking about renewals and how they might work. Let's do some more questions. We've got more in this list. If you have a question, the link is on your screen. You can submit questions at any time going to professormesser.com/QA. Let's see if we have others to break through. Let's see what other questions we have on our list. Speaking of CEUs, you might be collecting CEUs to renew your certification. And if that's the case, Andy asks, well, how do we add them to our CompTIA account? There is a link inside of your CompTIA account where you are able to do pretty much everything. If you're not familiar with that on the CompTIA website, let's bring this up. You go to login.comptia.org. Go to login.comptia.org and you will find there is a sign-in page where you sign in, and effectively that is your account for CompTIA to do anything, to schedule an exam, to look at your certification details, to submit CEUs, to ask a question at their help desk. Everything is inside of there. So anytime you are trying to schedule an exam, trying to look at your exam results, trying to know when your certification expires, trying to determine how to submit CEUs, they're all in this one place. CompTIA created this single portal, this single login a year, maybe 2 years ago. Very recently, they consolidated everything into this one login. And it was a little painful to take all of these different services and get them into one place, but now it is just so seamless that this is the way you do it. Go to CompTIA, login.comptia.org to be able to get your hands on that. It is a great resource and one that might help you if you're someone who is kind of working through the details of where to submit things, where to find information, how to look up all of my certifications. It's that one page. It's so easy now. Login.comptia.org for that. Great place to go for those. Other questions that are on this list. Some of these, for those of you watching on this live stream, where we are doing this live. We started at noon Eastern here on this live stream on October the 8th, Tuesday, October the 8th. And as many of you know, there is in Florida, we have hurricanes, and we have a hurricane that is scheduled to come through in a couple of days. So we have a question that came in from Chris. Let's see if I can make this a little bit bigger for you. Are you the only person who didn't evacuate in your area? Well, fortunately, I'm in the central part of Florida. I am as equidistant away from both coasts. I'm 100 miles, 150 miles from the coast, I guess, somewhere in there. So we're pretty, relatively speaking, we are far away from the coast. And for those of you that are not familiar with hurricanes, there's certainly the concern of high winds. And certainly where we are, there will be some high winds that are coming through. But a lot of the damage from these hurricanes is from water. You know, as the hurricane is coming in, it's pushing a lot of water onto the land. And we expect with this storm that there will be a storm surge. That's what we call this amount of water that is being pushed by this wind onto land. Storm surge is going to be about 15 feet, maybe even more in certain areas. Think about 15 feet. So where you're standing on the ground, now put water another 10 feet up. So if you're in a one-story house, you're now covered with water. And there are a lot of one-story houses right next to the coast in Florida. That means they will be completely covered in water, assuming they're going to be there at all when the storm subsides. It's going to be washed away. There will be a massive amount of damage, and there will be rebuilding that we do for years and years going forward because of this storm. It's sort of the nature of living in Florida, and we all know it. We all expect it. We all hope it doesn't happen, but we know it's a possibility. Where I am in Central Florida, thankfully, there's no storm surge. And where I happen to be, I don't have to worry about any type of flooding, localized flooding. So that part is good too. So I will be here for the duration. I'm not leaving. I don't have to leave. There is no forced evacuation where I happen to be. I'm in a very safe location. I'm in a house made of cinder block. We're in good shape. So no problems there. I fully expect that we're not going to have any issues. My biggest problem, though, is we generally will lose power, which is why if you were scheduled on your calendar to show up in 2 days for our Core 2 study group, you'll notice that Core 2 study group has been pushed a week out because I fully expect that first we'll be in the middle of the storm at that time. It will finally be subsiding about that point at my house, but we probably aren't going to have any power for at least a day or two. So that's what I fully expect when that occurs. So we're good here. Thank you for even mentioning it. Thank you for asking about it. Everybody in my neighborhood's hanging out here. We're going to be good. So no problems as far as that's concerned. Thank you for asking. Let's do some more CompTIA questions, though. A number of you have brought them in. The question, this is a pretty good one because a lot of people are concerned about when do I plan on maybe updating my study materials. The question from Isaiah asks, do you know when CompTIA A+ exams will be changed or updated? Well, in fact, I do. In fact, I gave those numbers. We're going to go back to this kind of the very beginning of our study group because I do have a bit of information that I can share regarding the A+ exams. Let's bring it up so you can see it. Here it is. So the current version of the exams is the 2201101 and the 2201102. The exam versions are numbered this way so that we can keep track of when and where they change because there are usually relatively slight differences as these exams are updated. But as you can imagine, every 3 to 3.5 years, these exams are updated. Well, in 3 years, certain technologies fall away, new technologies appear, and so they need to be added into the exams. That's why you don't see on the latest A+ exams, you don't see technologies from 10 years ago. That would be ridiculous. They get rid of those technologies. That also means you need to make sure you're using the latest exam objectives and that all of your study materials match those exam objectives because there are changes between these different versions of the exams. The current versions are the 2201101 and 2201102. They were released on April the 20th of 2022, which means we think they're probably going to retire somewhere around the October-November timeframe of 2025. So as we sit here in October of 2024, we got about a year before these exams go away. That is plenty of time to study for your exam. So if you're concerned about timing, you're concerned about that you're investing in certain exam materials and you want to be sure that you don't get into a situation where those exam materials are no longer useful, then just keep an eye on that clock. But know as we sit here today, the investment you make today will be something you can easily use before these exams happen to retire in the next year is when it will be retiring. So you have plenty of time. Don't wait a year. People will say this all the time. Oh, it's retiring in a year. I'll just wait a year and then I'll get certified on the new exam, which is interesting from a timing perspective because there's now 12 months where everyone else is getting their A+. And if you're trying to get a job with this A+ certification, they're already going to have it and you won't. So I think getting your certification now, having that certification in your pocket is much, much, much more valuable than waiting a year to get the same certification. There's nothing new about that new certification that makes it better than an existing certification. It's exactly the same cert. So don't run into that scenario either. You don't want to be someone who is waiting and waiting and waiting. And in the meantime, you're missing opportunities because other people are certified instead of you. Not a great situation. Let's get some more questions coming in. A lot of great questions coming in, by the way. Thank you for sending these in. If you'd like to submit a question, you could submit them using the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to submit that question. Let's ask. This is a pretty good one. This is from Anonymous. Anonymous asks, not that slide. There we go. Anonymous asks, there we go. I know this is commonly asked. Doesn't matter. I'll commonly answer it. I'm new at study for the CompTIA A+. What is the best way for studying for the exam? And also, should I buy labs to make up for the lack of hands-on experience? So this is really more about how you study best. But I will tell you the four things, the four elements that I think make up the best possible study materials. So the four things I think you should have. Number one, you should have a good video course. Okay, it's a little self-serving, but I think it still stands. I think we can teach things in video easier. We can demonstrate things on the screen in ways that other study methods can't. So I think it's an important thing to consider in your study materials. The other thing is to get a good book. The same way that videos can teach you a way that other things can't, books can teach you information in a way that other things cannot, which is why you really need both of those to complete that whole list of learning processes that occur in that very beginning phase of learning. We can read through the book. Books are very dense. Books are dense storage of data. And we can sift through that dense storage of data relatively quickly. And it teaches you in a different way. So I think both of those are good ways to start. Get a good video course, get a good book. The third, to the point that Anonymous asks here, we need some good hands-on. We need some way to test ourselves with these topics. I give you a little bit of hands-on in the video course. So anytime you have, for example, a command you need to know at a command prompt, we demonstrate it in our video course. But you might want to do this yourself. I think there's something about the typing process, the mousing process. Is it mousing? Is that what, when you use a mouse, what is that? Is it it's mousing. So the typing process and the mousing process, there's something about doing that muscle memory. If you're someone who's ever played a musical instrument, you probably are familiar with this, that once you learn the music, it sort of becomes a second nature. You sort of forget about the process of playing the piano or moving the trombone or playing the valves on that cornet. The thing that you do is it becomes second nature, and you forget about the mechanics, and it turns into more of feeling the music as it goes through. So you now have this muscle memory of playing it, and it just becomes a second nature to what you are doing. I think the same thing applies when you're working with these keyboards. You might even know this when you start using a password over and over again. You don't even think about typing the password. Your fingers just sort of do it. I think it's a similar scenario with using the ping command, using the dir command, using these different commands you need to know for both Windows and Linux. Those are things that might be useful to do too. So hands-on is good. So you asked about, should I get some labs? That might be a good investment. If you're someone who really likes that hands-on and it teaches you in a way that's very different than anything else, labs would be a very good use of your time. We do offer some labs on our site, a discounted set of CertMasters labs, which are very good labs, by the way. I really like their A+ labs. So those would be good ones to try. But there's other companies that make other labs. Find the ones that work best for you. That might be a good use. I mentioned there were 4 things. So we've talked about videos and books and labs. The fourth one is Q&A. And I think that's probably one of the best ways to test yourself. I, of course, have Q&A, and we've talked about it already with my practice exams. But you might want to try questions from other sources as well. The questions, I tend to wait and use those questions last. So once you've done the videos, once you've read the books, once you've had the hands-on, now let's see if we've learned anything. And this is also a really, really good way to go back and maybe adjust the way that you like to learn and find out if it really worked well for you. These Q&A should be your feedback to see, am I really ready to take the exam yet? So another good way to break through those are the 4 things. So would labs be useful? Maybe. Not everybody uses all 4 of them. Not everybody needs all 4 of them. You need to pick from those 4 the things that work best for you. And then those would be your best possible chance for passing this exam because you used the best possible training materials for you. That's what I would recommend. Those 4 elements become very, very, very useful. We are talking about technology in general today, about anything you would like to talk about. It doesn't have to be about A+. And this question is from Kristen. It talks about Security Plus. Kristen asks, is my CompTIA Security Plus study guide for exam SY0701 obsolete? Well, we have another scenario. I mentioned that these different exams have different numbers associated with them. The SY0701 is a relatively new exam. I think we're probably in the middle of that exam series. So it's about a year and a half old at this point. 701 is a good exam. It's been around for a while, and it is still the current version of the Security Plus. I was looking for my 701. Hold on. I got my 701 book right here. Here's my course notes. Here we go. So there's my 701 course notes. So if you've got anything that says 701 right now are perfectly good Security Plus materials. That's the latest version of the exam. Those are the ones, anything with 701 you should be using. Now, consequently, to take your question, Kristen, and if you're using study materials and it doesn't say 701, if it says 601, if it says 501, don't use those. The 701 exam is very different than the 601 exam. It's very, very different than the 501 exam. So anything that is the 701 is the latest version. Well, the question then becomes, well, how do you know what's latest? How do you know what the latest thing is? You go to the source. You go to CompTIA.org. Here's the CompTIA website. We'll go to the certification section of the website. Let's choose Security Plus. We'll click that, Security Plus Security, and it says right there, exam code SY0701. That's how you know that's the latest version of the exam. And they have other things in here that you can pull from, different information about the exam. Well, in fact, exam details right here at the bottom. Zip, 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 takes you right to the bottom. It tells you the exam code for the latest exam is the SY0701. It was released on November the 7th, 2023. It's not even a year old. I was way off. It's not even a year old at this point. So this is an exam that that is current. So if you are taking or you are using or you want to have a study guide and it says SY0701, that's the latest version. You got exactly what you need. So definitely use that. CompTIA does not tend to change their exam objectives during that 3-year period. They haven't done that in a very, very, very long time. And when they did it, they've done it once with A+ a number of versions ago, and it was a mess. Nobody was happy. Can you imagine changing the exam objectives right in the middle of everything? So they've decided not to do that anymore, thankfully. So once they release an exam version, everything is locked in for 3 years, which is really great. Very nice to have that capability there and available. Make sure always that your study materials match the version of the exam you plan to take. Certainly important on the 701 because the 701 is a very different exam than the 601. So probably even more than the others, you want to be sure that's the case, but always make sure you're using materials that match. If you're studying for the 701 exam, all of your study materials should be for the 701. If you're studying for the 1101 exam, for the A+, all of your study materials should be for the 1101 exam. I think you get the idea. Make sure they match and you'll be just fine. Never use older study materials. They're not going to provide you with information that you need. And some of the information that you would be going through is outdated and no longer on the exam, and you're wasting your time. And we don't want to do that. Let's go through some additional questions that we have. Other ones that are here. This is a question that tends to come up often, so I think we'll step through this one from Nellie, who asks, I'm new to tech, a career switch from law enforcement. I'm more interested in networking and actually retain the networking material easier than the A+ material. Do you ever recommend skipping the A+ and doing the Network Plus first? Well, this is something to keep in mind when you're dealing with any type of certification, not just A+ and not just Network Plus, but the major decisions you make about what you choose from a certification perspective are generally based on what you're planning to do with that certification. And that should be an important consideration. I would say for most of us, we are taking these certification exams often to give us some type of credentials that we can use to either get a job or get a better job. Now, I realize that's not always the case. Some people are getting these credentials for other reasons, but I would say the majority of people that are studying for an A+ exam are planning to use that certification to get a job that is asking for someone who's A+ certified. That sort of makes sense from that perspective, but this is also dependent on the employer. Some employers don't care about certifications. What that really means is that they're not willing to pay for someone who has certification. Usually that's what that means. Doesn't always mean that. Sometimes you will see organizations that will ask for certain certifications in the job posting itself. And they will be not just certifications, but other requirements there as well. So this is one of many things that you can use to prove your knowledge of different topics. And none of these are the sole credentials you bring to the table. Experience on its own is sometimes not enough. Certification on its own is often not enough. You have to have a combination of different experiences, understandings of different technologies, certifications, formal education. There's a lot of things that go into that formula that make up for the best possible thing that you can have to submit for a job posting. And often the certification you get matches a job that you are working towards. So really this question should really be reversed, which is you should be finding the jobs that you would be qualified for. Often these are entry-level positions that you would be qualified for, and you should see what the employer is asking for. If they're asking for A+, you should go get your A+. If the employer is asking for Network+, go get the Network+. So they should be giving you the prompt. You should not be the one trying to figure out, which one do I take? Do I take the A+ or the Network+? That's sometimes and very often not your decision. Very often it is the decision that's being made by the hiring organization to determine the type of knowledge they want you to have to get that particular role. Now, you might find that there is an organization that is looking for network professionals and you have some experience in networking. You've already been working in IT and you got your Network+ certification. You might be perfectly qualified for that position. In this particular question, Nellie was talking about a career switch. And this is a common question I get on our website. I'm in medicine. I'm in transportation. I'm in law enforcement. I'm in manufacturing, and I'd like to move into IT. So what do I do? Well, we need to figure out what are the entry-level jobs that are available in your particular geography, and what are they asking for? So it's time to make a spreadsheet. It's time to document out all of these different jobs that may be in your area, figure out what they're asking for. Maybe after looking at 10 different positions from 10 different companies, you find that 9 of them are asking for the A+. Well, there you go. There's your answer. Or you may find that none of them are asking for A+, and they're all asking for a cloud-based certification. Or if you live in the Washington, D.C. area, or in an area with a very large federal government footprint, you may find that a lot of these positions are asking for Security Plus as the entry-level certification. So it may be different depending on your geography, and it may be different depending on the segment of position that you're going towards, the vertical market, if you will, towards that. So if it's federal government, you may find a large emphasis in Security Plus. If it's entry-level corporate, you may find a large emphasis in A+. It simply depends on what you will run into. So I am not going to give you an answer. So the question was, do I ever recommend skipping the A+ and doing the Network+ first? Yes, there are times I recommend that. There's also times I recommend doing the A+ first. But it depends on what you're trying to do, what your goal is personally, and it also depends on what the goal is of these companies that are hiring in your particular area, because that often is the more important consideration. So it's a strategy. You have to come up with the game plan. So how are you going to go get that job? What are they asking for? So we need to get that list. We'll make a list of everything they're asking for, and we're going to go get everything on that list. That is your best pathway to getting that particular job. There's also, for those of you that are in that job hunt of how to get a job in IT with no experience in IT, there's a video for that. Of course, there's a video for that. It is in the YouTube video description of this video right now. You can look at it. And it is how to get a job in IT with no experience. And again, I give you some different elements to focus on. Again, I like these 4 elements. So I have 4 elements in that one as well of things that are important to have if you're trying to get that first job in IT with no experience. And I'll give you the Cliff Notes version of this is you need a formal education, a 2-year degree or 4-year degree. 4-year degree of any kind is preferable. Does not have to be a technical degree. My 4-year degree is in business management, not a technical degree. But I argue that we didn't have computers when I went to college. We did have computers, but that's the joke. The second part of this is not only do I need a formal education, it'd be nice to have some industry certifications. That's where A+, Network Plus, Security Plus comes in. That's your second element. The third element is some practical experience. Not necessarily professional experience. Professional experience being experience where they pay you to do a job. I would say this would not be your entry-level position. At that point, you've already had it. But having some practical experience, this may be experience where you are working for no money. Maybe you're volunteering. Maybe you maintain the computers for a church or an organization. And the fourth one of these, and it's really not as controversial as it sounds, is someone who already works there. Networking in our industry is very important. I don't mean like Ethernet networking. I mean people networking. Knowing people in the industry is extremely useful. Having a knowledge of who works at different companies and having met them and having conversations with them can be extremely useful in job hunt. So if there are Microsoft user group meetings, Cisco user group meetings, Palo Alto Networks user group meetings, or just technology group meetings in your area, you should attend those. You should meet the people who are there. You should ask them where they work. You should ask them if you can send them a resume. You should be very upfront. And because we know in our industry that's the way it works, no one will be surprised by this. Don't worry that you'll ask someone, can I send you a resume to submit for an entry-level position in your company? The answer is always going to be, oh yeah, absolutely. And here's why it's always going to be that way, by the way, is that in most companies, not just many, but I would say the vast majority of companies, there is an employee referral program. Because most companies know the best type of employees they can get are people that their current employees already know. If you already know someone, you know them as an associate, maybe it's somebody you've met at a user group meeting. These are people you're familiar with. You've already had conversations with them. Having a knowledge of that person is something that's very valuable during the job hunt. And if you can walk into an interview and go, sure, I know Bob in IT who works in IT because I met him at the Cisco user group meeting. We had a great conversation about how you guys were planning to do this big imaging project over the next year. He was working on the high-speed networking part of it, and he said there was going to be a need for additional technicians, and that's why I'm here. That's all you have to do. That's it. That's your in. So having that relationship, if you will, it's a very professional knowledge, professional relationship that we're talking about here. And sometimes it's just an acquaintanceship that gets your foot in the door. So that's an important part too. And by the way, since Bob took your resume and submitted it, if you get hired, he gets a referral bonus. He gets $250, $350, $500, as long as you stay for 6 months, that type of thing. So it's a win-win. You get a job, he gets a referral because you said, can you submit a resume for me? That's it. We do this all the time. And I know that I've mentioned this before, but I think it's a pretty important part of this is that it's useful if you have something people can look at online. And I think one of the best places you can put that online presence from a professional perspective is on LinkedIn. LinkedIn tends to be that. Now, LinkedIn is It tends to be other things as well. But if you're trying to build a professional front end, and by the way, need something where you can network with people that you meet professionally, that's a great place to do it. In fact, I need to go out to my LinkedIn. There is a trade show coming to town in a couple of weeks, and I don't have a ticket for that trade show. I think the Gartner Expo is coming to Orlando in a couple of weeks. I need a ticket for the Gartner Expo. There are people that I know on LinkedIn who I know are either their company is going to be represented there, and they often have free tickets they can give me just for expo access. So I'm going to go to LinkedIn and see who's going, see if they have an extra ticket, and see if they can send me one. It's because I've worked with these people before, and they know me, and I know them. And we just keep together and keep up with what everybody's doing by going to LinkedIn. It's another good way to do it. So that's my recommendation, is having a few of those things happen. Make sure you have a focus on those. I think that will be helpful too when you get into that point. Let's do some more. We've got more questions that are coming in, and we've got some time left before we hit the piece of this. For those some folks in the chat room are saying they're having lagging issues or having this happen. Remember that I'm sending a single stream to YouTube. You're seeing a stream coming from YouTube. So YouTube is taking my video, which by the way is going out. I'm looking at my statistics now, which look crystal clear. Everything looks great on my side. But if there's any delays or problems, it's going to be on the YouTube side because they are sending you the video directly from them. That's where you should focus. Maybe you can hit that cog wheel and put it at a lower number. Maybe you're having a bandwidth problem locally. Might be on your side. We just, without doing more research, we just don't know. But I'm not seeing any packet loss on this side. I'm not seeing any delays on this side. Everything is running perfectly clear here. The way I do that, for those of you wondering, it's from this is my streaming system here, my streaming box. This is the console for the streaming box. The streaming box is actually on my bottom right down here in the rack. But this is my summary for that, which shows that I'm sending about 6 megabits per second to YouTube. And it tells me this cache number of 3% tells me that I have a buffer of 3% that I'm sending out. So there's always 3% sort of left here before it goes to the YouTube side to make that happen. And if you are someone who is trying to figure out based on that, are they receiving everything? Is it coming through? Yep. 3% is exactly where we want to be. That's the right number. That's how I know instantly that everything is running fine on this side. So that's where that comes from. Let's do some more questions. We do have a couple of extra minutes for some additional questions coming in. So let's do a couple of extras. This is a pretty good one because I think a lot of us suffer through this. I'm a very bad test taker, by the way. I don't deal well with tests. There's a lot of anxiety with tests. I'm spending money. I'm walking into an odd area, or I'm in an unusual situation. There are rules and regulations associated with this. There's a lot on the line, and I get very anxious when I sit down and take one of these industry certification exams. Happens every time. I just can't help it. I'm get ramped up, and I sit down and I take this exam, and I don't even understand the words. I'm reading words on the screen. I have no idea what I'm reading. It looks structured in a way that would be similar to English words, but I don't know what they're saying. And I have to read sentences 3 times before I'm understanding what's going on. Anna knows what I'm talking about. She says, I'm scheduled to take my Core 1 exam in December remotely from home. I'm excited, but also very nervous as I get a lot of test anxiety. I'm with you there. Do you have any advice for me or others that experience the same? Thanks. Well, this is one of the things that I have gotten used to, and I have my own methods for dealing with test anxiety. And some of them work quite well, actually. I finally got a nice formula of things that I follow. The first is that I like to be very familiar with the test center. Now, that's if you're going to a third-party test center to take the exam. And I like to either have already taken an exam at that test center. If it's a center I've never been to before, I go to the test center before I book the exam. Not just the day before it's even scheduled, I go visit the test center. I want to see the test environment. And in many test centers, you can walk in and say, I'm planning to schedule an exam. Could I just have a look at the test room? Usually there's a glass and you can just look in the room. You don't even have to walk in. If nobody's in there, they'll even let you walk into the room to check it out. And you can look to see. And if you walk in and you're thinking, these are CRTs. This isn't even LCD display, which you won't run into anymore. But if you notice that maybe this is not a comfortable environment, maybe you should find a different testing center. Maybe that's not the best test center for you. Most of the test centers I've walked into, though, have been very, very well put together, primarily because the companies that do this, primarily Pearson VUE for CompTIA, but other companies do this as well, have a set of standard requirements everybody must adhere to be qualified as a test center. So thankfully, most of the ones I've walked into have been very good. So I know that the day of my test, I know where I'm going. I know what parking is going to be like. I know how long it takes to get there. I know the people that work there already. I know what the test center looks like. So a lot of the fear of the unknown has been wiped away because it's not unknown for me. I know exactly what I'm getting into and what it looks like. So that's something I like to do if I'm going to a test center. Now, if you're taking the exam at home, it's almost a similar thing. Where are you taking this at home? Are you taking it at a desk? What is this setup going to look like? You should already have a familiarity with the rules and regulations. And I would highly recommend going out to Reddit, especially the CompTIA subreddit, and going through and finding out what other people's experiences have been when they've taken their exams at home, because there are different rules that are applied and some rules that are applied even stricter at home than they are in a testing center, a third-party testing center. For example, at home, you can't take an exam and put your hand right here. I'm scheduled to take my Core 1 exam in December remotely from home. I'm excited. You can't do that. You can't put your hand in front of your mouth, and you can't talk. Now, by the way, you can't do that in a normal testing center either. I think a lot of people perhaps don't realize this, but you can't do that. There's other people taking their exam there. And that is why, if you are somebody who is focusing on exams, then that is an important consideration, something you should think about for taking these exams. So if you're someone who is working through the exam process, you're trying to figure out how to do this and work through an exam, make sure you're familiar with the exam process itself. The other thing I do, this is really just for the CompTIA exam, but not exclusively, but this is what I do for a CompTIA exam. At the beginning of the exam, they ask you to read through and agree to a set of what effectively is a non-disclosure agreement and a set of rules and regulations for people taking the exam. And they allocate about 15 minutes for you to read through this document online and be able to press the button and agree to all of this. I take this as a great opportunity to sit around for 15 minutes. You may wonder yourself, why are you sitting around for 15 minutes? Because my anxiety level is so high. The adrenaline is going and I can barely read what's on the screen. Why not just sit in a chair and why not read through the user agreement? Read through the candidate agreement, is what they call it. If you wanted to know what's in the candidate agreement, it's on the CompTIA website right now. Just look for the candidate agreement. But it's something where this would be a time for one time in your life, you can read through the EULA. You can read through the candidate agreement and read through what they're asking you to do and take your mind off the fact that you're sitting down to take the exam and instead sort of focus on what they expect from you as you are taking this exam. And now as the time goes by, you're sort of bleeding off the adrenaline. It's going away. It kind of settles you down a little bit. It's a little more zen. You're a little more in control. You're a little more focused on the environment you're sitting in. You've gotten a little more comfortable. And now you can at least understand what's on the screen. And now that 15 minutes have gone by, you can click, yes, I agree to this candidate agreement. And now you can begin the exam itself with a more comfortable, a more focused effort, a more focused perspective on what you're reading. And I think it's a better way. It's how I kind of get rid of a lot of jitters and anxiety at the very beginning by simply just sitting there and reading through this document that they give you 15 minutes to read, which is, thank you, CompTIA, for doing that, so that I can just get into the mode of sitting here and being ready to take this exam. It takes an extra 15 minutes. And maybe after 10 minutes, you're like, okay, I got this. I'm good now. And you can skip it. You go, yep, I agree. And we can start. A lot of people just scroll the bottom and click go, and they keep going. Good for them. I admire you for being able to do that. I'm not one of those people. I need to sit there for a while. So that's my tips and tricks for anxiety. That's what I like to do during an exam. Maybe that's something that can help you as well. I think we got time for another question. I know we're at the top of the hour. I'm sort of delaying this because I have to go now outside and bring things in for the storm. But we can get through the last one of these to break this down and see what's here. There are different things to focus on, but I think some of these would be a good consideration. This is from Anonymous, who asks another very common question, and one we should consider. Is Tech Plus as important as A Plus and Network Plus? I don't know. This goes back to the question we asked earlier. The value of a certification is based on what you are going to do with it. So what are you going to do with Tech Plus? Do you have employers that are asking you for Tech Plus? Tech Plus, by the way, is a rebranding of the ITF Plus that has on the CompTIA website. So let's have a look at the CompTIA.org again and go out to this view of the world. Those certifications, you'll notice Tech Plus is down here. This is what ITF was, sort of the new version of ITF. I know they had an ITF up here. Does it take us to a different page, or does it take us to the same page if we do that? So IT Fundamentals is kind of the older one. That's the one that's phasing out. But I mentioned to you every 3 years they update the certs. So they updated this cert. And not only did they update it, they changed the name. They even tell you the new Tech Plus is coming soon. Or this is really ITF Plus. That it really is. It's the FC0U71, whereas the ITF FC0U61 is IT Fundamentals. U71 is IT Fundamentals new version that also has a new name called Tech Plus. That's what that is. So Tech Plus. So for those of you that are trying to figure out, do I take Tech Plus? Well, the exam details are here. You can download exam objectives. Notice it's not active yet, but it will be. And it says that if you have unexpired ITF certification exam vouchers, they can be used to schedule the Tech Plus, because it's the same thing. It's kind of what they're telling you there. Would you want to use Tech Plus? Is Tech Plus something that would be valuable to you? And the question was, is it as important as A Plus and Network Plus? Generally, overall, in the industry, most employers are asking for A Plus, Network Plus, and Security Plus in the world of CompTIA certifications. Some of them might be asking for Tech Plus. Some schools require you to have Tech Plus. But it's up to what your specific objectives happen to be. And if your objectives are to get a job and that hiring manager is asking for Tech Plus, then you need to absolutely have Tech Plus. I haven't seen a lot of those. So if I'm comparing it to A Plus and Network Plus, Tech Plus is not in the realm of those at the moment. These things change though. The tech market, certifications, the industry in general moves at a rapid pace, lightning fast. So one day one certification might be hot, the next day a different certification might be hot, and maybe Tech Plus is coming on as one of the things that everybody wants to have. So again, this goes back to look at the job postings, see what people in your area are asking for, look at the exam objectives and see if exam objectives are something you might want that apply to you or something that might be useful to you. And then you can decide if that's something you'd like to pursue. I think most people start with the A Plus The only time I've seen people start with a Tech Plus is when they really are starting from ground zero, or they're going through a program at a educational facility that requires they take Tech Plus first and then moves them into A Plus and moves forward from there. So I think that's one of the differences you might run into. Again, you'll need to look at what employers are asking for, at what certifications are popular, and see if you find some type of commonality across all of these different employers that might lead you towards the Tech Plus over an A Plus or Network Plus. I would probably find that to be an unusual situation today, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe in your area, it's different. The only way you would know is to kind of do the work, step through the process, and understand what people are asking for as far as A Plus, Network Plus, or Tech Plus. And then you'll be able to make that decision. Well, I think that's a good place to stop. This brings us to the end of our after show. Thank you for sticking around for another hour with us. Yep, I got to go outside now, start bringing everything inside and start getting ready for the storm. Maybe when we meet back a week from now, it'll be old news. We can all look back at this and laugh and figure out what was going on, but we've got a lot of things to do here. I want to thank you for joining us and sticking with us for the last couple of hours. Thank you for your time in this first hour. Don't forget, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up on the YouTube. Be even better if you went over and subscribe to our channel. We would love you forever. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/YouTube and give us a subscription. We've got a lot more coming next week. Next week is our Network Plus study group and our Core 2 A Plus study group. I got a lot of questions I need to start writing. So this will be where we come back next week. We'll do more of this. I'll do an hour of Q&A, and then we'll do an hour where you can ask me anything. That's on Wednesday and Thursday of next week. Creek don't rise, as they say. We'll see how things are after the storm. Hopefully we've scheduled that in a way that we can fit that in and we can keep this whole party going. That's the idea for this. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your ongoing support. Thank you for your kind words and your thoughts about the storm. We appreciate you. We will stay safe. Hopefully you can do the same as well. Look forward to seeing you on the other side of all of this. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on the A Plus Study Group.